Welcome back to another episode of Cornhusker Connection. I'm Brandon Shanahan. Another pre-episode announcements because college football changes quicker than we could put content out. But this episode was recorded right after Colorado made the announcement that they're going to the Big 12. We thought we were getting ahead of it. Big news. Since then, Oregon and Washington have left for the Big 10. Other schools have joined Colorado in the Big 12. Everything's so different than it was when we recorded this episode, so just keep that in mind. Still a great episode. Iowa players can't stop betting on their football games. We talk about that. Lots of great stuff going on here. Here we are, Cornhusker Connection. Go Big Red. All right, what's going on, fellas? We're back. We got myself, Brandon Shanahan, Tyler Sprinkles here, Brooke Byrne's here, Bookie Brooke here. Lots to go over. I feel like the whole college football landscape has changed since the last time we talked. Big stuff going on. We'll be talking about conference expansion. What's the next domino? What do we want to happen? Iowa players can't stay out of the sports books, which is insane. And then, also there is football going on in a few weeks, so we'll talk about that as well. But first thing, the big news in college football, Colorado back to the Big 12. And as a Colorado fan, I'm hyped. I was thinking about it today. The whole door opening for me to be a Nebraska fan in the first place was the fact that Colorado went to the Pac-12. I couldn't watch them. It wasn't even the fact that they were so bad. I could not watch them. And when Nebraska went to the Big Ten, they have the Big Ten network. So even when they're playing these FCS or Group 5 not conference teams, you're still able to watch them. And that's, accessibility is a huge thing. I'm stoked. In the brightest timeline as a Colorado fan, this is the first domino that falls because in a world where Coach Prime works out, they're not going to be able to afford even close to market salary if they're in the Pac-12 and their games are on a gas station TV. But hopefully, in the brightest timeline, this closes that gap. Overall, were you guys shocked?
It makes sense that they're going back to the Big 12 just because, like Brandon touched on, they had to find a way to pay Coach Prime, and that TV deal and the Big 12 money really, I feel like, solves that problem. Remains to be seen what happens next. I'm really interested to see if the Pac-12 just folds as a whole, because in our lifetime or in the last 30, 40 years, we've seen nothing like that where a conference just disbands like that. So interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me because I know that they're making money, but it's nothing compared to what the other conferences are making. So the fact that they're, pretty much like Brooke said, dead, is crazy. It's almost like a bank failing almost. Like they're so big, and for them to just fold is going to be interesting to see.
I remember probably just around a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, when the Big 12 decided they were going to add UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU. It seemed like they would be the conference to eventually fold in on itself because they're losing Oklahoma, they're losing Texas. They have already lost Colorado and Nebraska and Texas A&M, and now they're adding these schools. Granted, like a good group of 5 teams, but still group of 5 teams. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like out of nowhere when UCLA and USC announced that they were going to the Big Ten, and now all of a sudden, these Pac-12 members have been waiting for a TV deal for months and months and months, and there's just nothing available. And the Big 12 swooped up whatever else money ESPN had earlier this year, and the Pac-12 just doesn't have any juice left and no chips to bargain with. So yeah, I active if they're around long term, which is an insane thing to think of.
My thought real quick on that was when Oklahoma and Texas announced that they were leaving to the SEC, it sounded like the Big 12, like Brandon said, was going to go under, and it looked like Texas and Oklahoma were the real winners of that situation. But I mean, as time progressed, I think the Big 12 has won out of that now just because it seems to me like Oklahoma and Texas, might be bottom of the barrel teams in the SEC right away unless, something changes from now to next year. And the Big 12's ultimately gotten stronger, adding UCF, Cincinnati, BYU. So good for them. I mean, I love to see Texas and Oklahoma fail, but I mean, they've got an uphill climb, joining the SEC. So
Well, I think Brandon hit it on the head. Like half of America can't watch their games because they're going on at 10 p.m. Where yeah, it's good when you're at the bar, you see a game on, you get to watch it. But other than that, what are we doing here? Like
yeah,
I understand, like they want to have night football. That's cool, but half of America cannot watch your games. What do you expect to happen? Like why do you think nobody else wants to pick up your deal? Like cool. I don't get it.
exactly. I'm a real college football sicko where I love the Pac-12 after dark games, but you got to think people with families and young kids and all those people on the East Coast, like it's tough to stay in tune what's going on in the Pac-12. So this definitely helps that. Like you'll see, like Rutgers playing UCLA here in a couple of years. So it's like people will be, oh crap, oh there he is. People will be more in tune with, what's going on all across the country. I mean, the time zone thing is going to be weird in general the first year or two, because it's like, you know, Rutgers fans are going to have to stay up dumb late to like watch their team play, but I think it's good. I think it's good for the college football brand overall.
Yeah, and I wonder how that's going to work when the Big Ten is playing on the West Coast. I wonder if they're going to push their games back to a 7 p.m. start time for them. Like I just wonder how that's going to work. I'm very curious to see if they're going to move their games up when they're on the West Coast to allow the rest of America to actually watch them. And when they're on game day, I mean, they're playing games at 11 a.m. Central Time. They're playing games at 9 a.m. Like I'm sure that's not going to happen. But I hope that they move them into like the middle afternoon time slots. It's like 11 and then what 3?
It's 11, 2:30, and 7.
Yeah. So I wonder if they're going to move those games to like 2:30. So like I said, allow the rest of America to watch them. I'm just very curious to see how this is all going to break down because again, this is a huge development in the college football world. Like everybody has had it the same way for most of their lives. So I wonder how this is going to work out.
And I think when it's all said and done, it's going to turn into more of a net negative than anything. Because I think so much of what's great about college football compared to like the NFL is how regional it is. And I think I was looking at the Big 12 today. I mean, now that you and Texas are gone, the biggest, I mean, other Kansas and Kansas State, there's no like good rivalries there. And if so, it's Cincinnati and Central Florida. And, no more Bedlam, no more Red River there. And I mean, it is what it is. It's how things are evolving. And now each conference is negotiating TV deals. So there's not a great way to keep it that way without blowing everything up. But I mean, and you think of teams like Oregon State and Washington State that do have these what feels like a mid-major kind of brand of football, but still like I don't know, they feed so much off of what this college football environment is, and I think that there's so many more losers than there are winners here.
I mean, you make a good point.
Adapt or die. Adapt or die. And
yeah,
the Pac-12
for sure.
is currently dying.
I wonder if we're gonna see like a big like jump up in teams that like do Oregon State and Washington State maybe just go independent for a while, because I think it would be like tough for them to take a step backwards and join like the Mountain West or something like that, because I mean, they're not like huge factors in college football, but like for other sports, like they are still like a bigger name, like Oregon State and Washington State normally have decent basketball teams, and I mean Oregon State has a powerhouse baseball team, so it's just there's so much remaining like that's needs to be seen and how it's all going to play out, but it's like these realignments are so like football focused. I wonder like what's the trickle down effect in other sports.
Well,
I
football brings
heard
in most of the
someone
money
talk
because
about
I'm sorry, Brandon. The football brings in the most of the money because nobody talks. Well, first of all, you can't really watch college baseball. It's never on. Like you have to get a different like streaming service just to watch them. So that's a hard thing to put your pin in. So I think, as you pointed out, I think that might suffer a little bit, but at the same time, with all the money coming in, they might change that. Hopefully, you can actually like
but you
watch
also get
college baseball and watch
I
that.
talk about I heard someone talk about how a lot of these sports is going to become club sports because you can't feasibly send UCLA and UCLA or USC on these charter jets to go play a Tuesday night women's basketball game just because they have to go
Exactly.
2,000 miles. It's just that part and is bonkers and as crazy as his football money is. I mean, those sports are going to suffer, whether it be short term or long term. It can't be good. Can't be sustainable that way, the way that it is now, where
And,
you're able
and
to
that's
pay
why
for these sports.
and that's why conferences were so regional for that very reason where it's like, you can play a Tuesday night basketball game and like be back for like classes the next day if you set it up the right way. And now, like you said, it's just like the student part of student athlete is going to be so affected where it's like, are kids just going to like start taking online classes now? Or I just, I don't know what's going to happen with that. And it's, like Sprinkle said, football brings in the most money, but it's like at what cost for all these other sports and factors that go along with that.
Yeah, and the only solution that could be thought of is like logistically, like hitting the reset button and kind of restructuring these conferences to be more regional. And I think that makes everything more interesting and more competitive on like on like a home base level. But then you got to renegotiate all these TV deals. You got to divvy up the pie, and I mean that's not going to happen. So I mean this is the reality of it.
Yeah, and this might be like a really stupid ass question, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. No way can you be in one conference in one sport and be in a different conference in the other sport, right? Like you have to be all in.
Well, the only thing I will say is Notre Dame's independent in football, but basketball and baseball, I know they're part of the ACC. So I don't
Oh,
know if
okay. So maybe that's
Maybe
maybe
a
that's
that's
the
just
thinking.
like a
solution.
maybe that's just like a one-off thing, though. I don't know if there's another situation like that, but
No,
I
that
know
yeah.
that's the only one I can think of that's weird like that.
Yeah, it's a specific situation because they're not in two conferences, but they just don't
Yeah, they're
No,
just
participate in
in
one of the
one and none
conferences.
in the other. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that might be the solution where you just kind of restructure things on a sport by sport basis on what makes the most sense. Because goddamn,
And
like the closest school to these USC and UCLA teams is Nebraska, half a country away. That's the next
yeah.
closest. Like obviously we throw out Rutgers. It's just a very silly. Oh, they have to fly all the way across the country, but Nebraska's the next closest, which
Yeah.
is, I mean,
and
that doesn't
just to
seem
play
sustainable.
and just to play devil's advocate, say the Big Ten grabs Florida State and Clemson. Could you imagine like um, a basketball trip for like UCLA? Like they might not be home for like 2 weeks in this scenario where, say, they play at Nebraska, they go to like Rutgers, and then they bounce down to Tallahassee to play Florida State, and then go back home. Like, I mean, that would be just like a crazy road trip, and like not only just for like the school aspect, but like being on a plane that much in like a period of time, like with jet lag, and it's got to affect play.
I mean, yeah, you hear NBA players talk about it all the time, just the drag of traveling every other night and getting to your hotel at 4 a.m. and then got a game the next day. Maybe not that intense in this aspect, but these are also 19-year-old kids, who don't know much of anything at this point. So having to balance that and then and not even like getting all the glitz and the glam like the football team does. I mean, it's a crazy thing to think about.
A lot remains to be seen with, Florida State. I mean, it would make the most sense for them to go to the SEC, but it'd be really interesting if the Big Ten could grab them.
I mean, that's kind of what the sense that I'm getting, because it seems like the Big 12 wants Oregon and Washington, but Oregon and Washington want to go to the Big 10, but the Big 10 wants Florida State and Clemson, or wants to see what they can poach out of the ACC, which it feels like an episode of Love is Blind, but I, it's tough to really visualize, because and Greg Sankey of the SEC announced that he's not looking to add any teams, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them, because the trick with Florida State and Clemson is that they're so locked into their shitty TV contract. It would cost so much money that the conference would probably have to step in and pay a chunk of that bill. That we already have the most valuable product here in the SEC. Why would we jeopardize that revenue for our member schools to bring in these new guys? So I'm really curious to see how this plays out, because the Big Ten has the money for it. It's just a matter of if they want to pull the trigger on it. And if they don't pull the trigger on it, then Oregon and Washington seem like a no-brainer.
Yeah. I think with the Big Ten adding USC and UCLA, it makes more sense to grab Oregon and Washington. But what do I know? None of this makes sense. So,
yeah, I mean, it's really just trying to find a spot on the lifeboat at this point. Like, nothing makes geographical sense. It's really just, where can we find stability for our conference and our schools. But I would have to imagine that at some point when it seemed like UCLA and USC were becoming real options for the Big Ten, they had to have thought like this would be a domino effect, and eventually they would be able to grab a couple of Pac-12 teams, because that makes this whole thing a lot more seamless, where you have your 14 pot on the West Coast, grab a couple of teams in the Midwest, and then your Eastern Big Ten teams. And then all of a sudden you have a functioning conference that can circumvent all the issues that we just talked about. But then also Clemson and Florida State are crazy huge football brands. So, money speaks.
While I'm thinking about it, I think like a sneaky thing to watch maybe coming up is I could see the ACC as a conference folding as well. And I mean, I don't know what conference those teams all go to, but if Florida State and Clemson jump ship, I think you see a similar thing like the Pac-12, where other teams are looking to go, maybe the Big 12, maybe the AAC, but that's a sneaky storyline to watch for me.
Yeah, there was a Florida State Board of Trustee member, Drew Weatherford. He said it's not a matter of if we leave, it's a matter of how and when we leave the ACC, because they are getting robbed from a revenue standpoint. And we talk a lot of shit about the Pac-12 negotiations and their TV deal, but they're still getting more money per school than the ACC is, which is insane to think about. And they're locked in until halfway through the next decade, which is, I mean, it seems like malpractice at this point for whoever negotiated that deal.
But as we talked about last week, the ACC has 2-3 teams tops. The Pac-12 had the USC, the UCLA, the Oregons, the Utahs. Like, they have the firepower to warrant that kind of deal, whereas the ACC just doesn't. Like, they have 2 teams, maybe 3. You could argue 3. But who wants to spend big money to watch these games, or to get the rights to broadcast these games, if you're not Clemson or Florida State?
Very good point.
You do also get Duke and North Carolina basketball season, which isn't nothing. But yeah, you know, you're not wrong. There's a lot of poor brands in the ACC, so you're not wrong. But then yeah, teams like Clemson and Florida State, I'm not going to bring up Miami, but those big brands they suffer at the expense of it, which is crazy to think about.
Miami doesn't exist. It's a fake school.
You're right. You're right.
Oh,
Clemson,
right.
Florida State. Those are the brands that we're talking about. Another unintended consequence that I thought of is the playoff expands here after this year. There's going to be some bad teams in it, just with the six best conference champions, because it makes sense when you have five good conferences. You know, you get the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 in, and now you're going to get a Pac-7 champion or a Pac-10 with the.
It's the 6 conference champions.
I believe so.
Who is the 6? Because it's the Power 5. Is it the AAC?
The next highest ranked conference champion. So the sixth highest ranked conference champions.
Like
get in.
the group of 6, the highest ranked one. I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then you get this decimated Pac-12 and an AAC maybe that's now without Cincinnati and UCF, who are really the only two schools to have a major success in that conference. So yeah, we're gonna get some bad teams, which
but ball is ball.
Weird
right?
to see like a 9-win.
No.
Yeah, ball is ball, but seeing like a 9-win Oregon State team make the playoff will be very weird, especially after how the playoff is formed over the last 10 years, where it's so separated from the rest of college football.
I would be willing to bet when they go to that the 12 team, I bet they amend that, and it's probably going to be the 4 power conference champions, the group of 5 highest one, and then the rest are still at large, because the Pac-7 or what it would be like think about like the Pac-12 as it stands right now hasn't had a team in the college football playoff, or in a while at least, unless I'm drawing a blank. Was it Washington?
Yeah, Washington way back, I think like year 2 or 3.
Yeah, since then it's so hard for them to get in, and you're telling me their top 5 teams are leaving, and they're going to get a team in when this changes? No freaking way. They're going to be like bottom of the barrel. Like, yeah, no shot. They keep that format with the Pac-12 after all those teams leave.
Yeah, I'd be curious how easy this is to amend, because it seems like every step of the way with this college football playoff and talking about expansion has just been such a hair-pulling experience. And then you only get 2 years of the current or the next format before you have to refigure it all out again. So I don't know if they'll be willing to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, it'll look weird for sure, and it'll be interesting to see if maybe now the AAC gets a team in, and Conference USA gets a team in because they go undefeated, or whatever the case is. It'll be weird.
my whole thing is like, so could you imagine if they did leave it as is, and like a team like, for instance, Purdue, when they won the Big Ten West at like 7-5? Could you imagine if like Washington State won the Pac-12 at like 7-5, and then they're 8-5, and now they're in the college football playoff, and then they just get smacked by like 40? Like, no one would want to watch that.
I mean, to be fair, the college football playoff for the most part hasn't been very competitive lately.
No.
I mean, the semifinal games were good this year, but they were fucking awful last year. The national championship game is what it was. So
I feel like that's just like carryover from. I feel like you're gonna see teams like start to level out, and there's gonna be like a lot more parity, I believe, in college football, where it won't just be the SEC anymore. Like, the SEC will still have Bama and Georgia, but the Michigans, the Ohio States of the world, like Michigan has been in the last 2 or 3 years, so they're catching up. It's only a matter of time before they put it all together and win a natty. Maybe USC, I think, this year could possibly factor into it. I just think it's so hard to three-peat. I'll go out on a limb right now and say an SEC team does not win the natty this year.
Yeah, I think that's. I think and just on the sheer unlikelihood of a team three-peating, I mean, that disqualifies Georgia. But I think that is one of the unintended consequences of this playoff is that the top brands like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State have benefited so much from being in the playoff regularly, where a lot of these players are funneling into those systems instead of, well, if I go to Penn State's and we have a 10-win season, we can still compete for a national championship, so on and so forth. And Joel Klatt had brought up the point that Colorado had that good season where they were a game or two away from possibly making the playoff, and how program changing that could have been if it had been expanded at that point where they would have made it. And then all of a sudden the wheels fall off and they're getting blown out by 30 points a game. It's just a matter of years. So I think in the long haul that the way that they set it up, I think is the perfect way. It adds incentives on every tier. You get the top tier teams who are fighting for a bye all the way to the very end, fighting for home field advantage. Then you have a whole gaggle of teams just trying to get in and make a statement for the program. I think they nailed it, and I think as time progresses, it will even out parity. But for a while, I think it still will be the same kind of 2 or 3, 4 schools that we've been accustomed to.
And I think Joe Klatt hit the nail on the head. Like, it just makes sense as a recruit, you want to play in the biggest games. So, like you said, Brandon, it would make sense that the higher rated recruits are funneling into those programs because they want to be seen on that stage. And so when we expand to the 12 team playoff, like, I feel like some of these kids will start saying to themselves, well, if I can get on the field sooner somewhere other than Bama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and be seen in those big games, then it would make sense to, go to somewhere that's not as, top heavy like that. So I think
Yeah,
parity is coming.
I just imagine like a 5-star quarterback, and maybe he has some ties to a school like Nebraska already in place. And instead of like, okay, I'm just going to ride this guy's coattail at a school like, I don't know, Georgia, and just kind of fill in and win these national championships here. He could maybe end up at a place like Nebraska where he has, I don't know, maybe a family connection or family member on the coaching staff or something. Some circumstances line up like that, and he's like, okay, well, I can still build something great here at Nebraska, even though they're not not like Georgia, hypothetically, of
Exactly.
course.
Exactly.
And the next big thing in college football, I guess Iowa players can't stop betting on football games that they play in. Iowa and Iowa State both have guys that are in deep shit, not just with, the NCAA and that competitive line that, every sports entity is so worried about crossing as far as like shaving points and this and that. But also those guys in Iowa, since they're using somebody else's account, it's considered like falsifying records. And I mean, a lot of these players are in big trouble. I know there's a Denver Broncos player who bet on 53, made 53 different bets on Broncos games. And so I really curious to see how this plays out and see who kind of takes the hold of the jurisdiction. If it's the university, if it's the conference, if it's the NCAA who steps in, because like we've seen with the NFL, they've been laying the hammer without hesitation and very aggressively to kind of avoid any slippery slopes open. But it seems like college football is already way past that point that the NFL has seen, other than this guy from on the Broncos.
And here's my thought real quick on it. I think the NCAA needs to come out with just hard and fast rules where, if it happens once, like, the rule, you're done. And my thought personally is I feel you should let kids that are of age bet on other sports because I don't feel that you can totally stop them from doing it. Like, there are ways around it, but if you let them bet on other sports that they're not involved in, maybe that would take away the itch of it. I don't know. And if you do get caught betting on your own sport and especially your own team, I think you should just be done. Like, you're not allowed to play an NCAA regulated sport anymore. I feel like that would, really curve the number of people you would have betting on it.
That seems very reasonable. I think I would almost want it to be more aggressive because what you said was very reasonable in the sense that when I picture college kids, like so many of these college athletes are, there is a vast majority that it doesn't seem like the same kind of stakes as the NFL. But it is such a slippery slope where, like, the first second that you get that kind of question, like, is this guy point shaving or is this game really at its full competitiveness? That discredits the game so much and so quickly that I wouldn't even be opposed to stricter enforcement of that. But you're right. I don't know what the rules are for
I
college athletics. I don't.
it
Like the
doesn't.
NFL has been so clear from the get go.
Yeah, I don't think we've had a big like NCAA scandal with betting yet that I can remember. But yeah, this could be bad for those Iowa and Iowa State players because the NCAA, like the NFL, could be looking to set an example. And I don't want to say death penalty necessarily, but I saw some of like the money numbers of like what these kids were betting on, and there were some high dollar amounts. So it wasn't just like $10 here, $10 there. Like when you look at like the total number, that's like, and this could all be inaccurate, but when I saw online, if this is true, what some of these sources are saying, like these kids could be in some deep, deep trouble.
Well, the last one I saw was the Iowa kicker, like bet like $4,400, which is a large amount depending on how many bets they place. But it's not like crazy. Like it's not like they're betting $100,000 on a bet to get the under. But again, that is a slippery slope. Like you don't know what's gonna like because that Iowa kicker, there was one, and I'm not saying he did it, okay, but there's one where he bet the under against Iowa State, and he missed that field goal at the end of the game. Like,
See, but that's a question now. That's
tough.
something that we're not sure that he did, but maybe is not impossible, and that
Also,
discredits the whole sport.
Right.
Along that line, Sprinkle, there was a game, Iowa State versus Texas, where Iowa State was up the whole game and Texas was playing like shit. And all of a sudden, like, Iowa State started like missing wide open passes, like fumbling the ball, and they ended up losing. And everybody was clowning Iowa State for like these blunders that they had where I feel like NCAA investigators are going to be taking a long look at some of these games. Like, we may have not only betting scandals, but point shaving scandals now, where
But
this is a bad
to
situation.
me, it's a lot more alarming in college, just because. Well, this was before the NIL deals started to come out. Because to me, right, and this is my stupid fucking opinion, but in the NFL or like in pro sports, they're getting paid, right? Like they're making real money. And the college kids, again, before the NIL deals, we're making shit. So if they're like, oh, I could throw a bet here and make a couple bucks so I can go out with my buddies or whatever. But again, if you're starting to like shave points and shit, like obviously that's alarming. But it doesn't really affect me because I don't bet like you guys. But I understand the issue with that.
To your point about what you're saying, Sprinkle, it's college kids aren't making life-changing money, and they're still getting like stipends. Their living situations are getting taken care of. Like they're
That's
eating
true.
well. It's just not changing the lives of their families. And like, I mean, I've been friends with a few kids that have played football down at Lincoln. Like, they're still getting pretty good chunks of money, like a
Yeah.
month to live off of. And like, especially like, say a kid gets $3,000 a month for his living situation, but if he moves in a house with 3 of his buddies and he's only paying $750 a month for rent, like he just gets to pocket the other $2,250, and
Yeah.
you know, so it's
And
not like these kids are just dumb broke. It's they
right.
have a little money to spend now, and like you
It's
said,
just
maybe they're trying to hit it big off of what they know, which is a bad sign. But
yeah. And
And I think
it
the
just
stakes
it's
kind
just
of raise with the amount of money.
yeah.
Like an NFL player putting $10,000 is probably the same to scale as a college football player putting down like 1,000 or however that ratio comes out.
Right. Right. But to me it's like, the Calvin Ridley thing. Like he wasn't playing. So why does it matter?
yeah,
At least again, my stupid brain, I don't know shit about betting. So if he's not playing, he's not affecting the game anyway. Why does it matter that he was betting on it? And I understand that they have to have a line. I get that because we let Calvin Ridley bet and he wasn't playing, so I'll just take a year off and I'll bet on what I know. It's just so
but
involved. It's so
but the thing
involved, and I
is
don't get it.
Calvin Ridley is still in the building with all of those guys. So if say
Was he?
I mean, maybe he's not, but I would think as a member of a team, you're still like in tuned enough to like what's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on. But
Because it's not like he
say,
was hurt though. He literally said, "I'm just taking a year off. I don't want to deal with this shit."
yeah,
So to me, that means that he's not going to be involved in the team, not going to be in the building. At least, again, my dumb brain, I don't fucking know shit. But to me, that's what it sounds like. He wasn't involved in any of that stuff. But again, like strict line, you just can't have that shit. So it makes sense to me on why he got punished so hard, but also if he's not affecting the game, why does it matter? It's like Brooke placing a bet. Like Brooke's not affecting the game. Are they gonna suspend him? I mean,
no,
I
but
don't know.
like I feel the thought process is he went to Bama. So say he's texting Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry's like, "Hey man, don't tell anyone, but it's not looking like Tannehill's gonna play today." And then he goes and places like $1 million wager on whoever Tennessee's playing. So
See, and that's a perspective I don't. Oh, that's a perspective I don't really have. Um, and because like I said, I don't bet, so I don't have that perspective. But that's a good point that Brooke makes there. Like, yeah, I guess you do have connections around the league to affect those kinds of bets. So to me, it more so sounds like like these bookies are worried about, or the casinos are worried about losing money instead of it actually being a big deal. Which I get that, right? Their money is based off of me placing a bet 2 times my life and losing both, and them getting my $200 or whatever.
Well, and you're not wrong. I like your point is very reasonable, and in the sense that, well, if he's not affecting the game, what difference is it? But I think the NFL has made it a point, like we are going to lay down the hammer. We're going to make an example out of whoever we can get our hands on first. In the same way
Yeah.
that I think like the NCAA will do with these Iowa guys. And the only thing I would add to that is I probably equate it to like similar like insider trading. Like you have specific
Okay.
information. Obviously
So
not as like harmful,
well,
but
that more so speaks to me. Like I understand that line. I get that line. But if you are, to me, again, dumb. To me, if you're betting on your team to win the game, then what's the harm in that? Like you're just trying to make a couple extra bucks. Like it's not like you're betting the under and for the team to lose because you have the insider information. It's I understand everything, but also it seems a little much to me. I don't know.
I feel
you're
like the
not
bottom
wrong.
line is just it's a slippery slope. Like it's just another thing like the NCAA and the NFL would have to police very hard. Where it's like if they could just nip it in the butt right away, why wouldn't you do it?
What if Scott Frost is actually a really good football coach, but he just has a crippling
So
gambling addiction?
I'll tell you what, we're not going to do that.
I'll
They're
jump off the
absolutely
South
not gonna
Omaha
do that.
Bridge if that's the case.
I mean, the way that they lost some of those games, I mean, I'm not sure. Like, okay, I definitely had Michigan State covering the point spread. Don't even worry about that guy over there. Just focus on this guy while we're punting it. I
Yeah, I
I
understand everything, but it's also it's just kind of some circumstances it doesn't make sense to me, but some circumstances it does. I don't know. I don't know shit though. Again, I'm an idiot.
yeah, you're not wrong.
Well, I would like to
Very
thank
reasonable.
Brandon for giving me something that was going to keep me up tonight. Now that I'll have to think about what if Scott Frost was just throwing games.
I mean, they were cruise. I mean, they had Logan Smothers in at quarterback against Iowa, and they're winning. Maybe it's like maybe we just take our time on this punt.
Yeah.
You know, maybe just ease up a little bit. Make sure you take your time, get set. I don't know. There's just a lot of funky ways that those games ended.
For sure.
But speaking of betting, I did want to wrap up real quick with just some our Bookie Brooke segment. Just general college football and futures. You know, last year, I was super stoked that I had Caleb Williams winning the Heisman. It was the only college football bet I bet last year, and it hit. And just kind of looking at some of these odds, he's the winning favorite to win the Heisman again, which feels crazy. Georgia, obviously the heavy favorite to win the national championship. One that I did think that was interesting was so the two highest favorite teams to win their conference. One is Georgia, they're negative money, or they're pushing negative money.
Mm-hmm.
And then can you guess who the second biggest conference favorite is?
Is it Texas?
Tyler,
Or
do you
is
have a
it
guess?
is it in the SEC or is it a different conference?
Different conference.
Is
Oh,
it Michigan?
It's Texas.
oh,
Which
it is
I
Texas.
thought, which I think is crazy because I think that the margin between the Big 12 teams is way closer than like Michigan and Ohio State, or even like USC if they make another leap in the Pac-12. I also think Texas fucking sucks. So I mean, there's a little bit of bias there.
I think Vegas is trying to take advantage of the hype train on Texas and like take people's money because some of the football that Quinn Ewers put out there last year was just horrible. So I think that could be like betting on Texas for like futures. Either you're going to look really, I feel like there is going to be no in between. Either they're going to be really good and factor into the college football playoff, or they are going to be abysmal and be like 8-4 and 7-5 again. So I don't think there's a situation where there'll be like a fringe CFP team. I think they'll either be for sure in or for sure out.
I think so too. I don't think and the thing with Texas is that they are kind of like a ticking bomb, or at any point they can really just put it together and be an elite college football team. But I mean they haven't in a long time, so you always do kind of have that thought, which I think is why I'm so skeptical on them being such heavy favorites to win the Big 12. Because if I was betting on Texas, that's poor value. But yeah, I do think you're right. I think they are trying to kind of get people excited about Texas and figure that out.
Yeah.
But
yeah, for my money, I think whenever you're making future picks, you want to stay away from those teams that are like even money, just because there's not a ton of value there. Like for me, I think I am personally going to go bet on Florida State to win their conference, to make the CFP, and to win it all, because I feel like they're getting a little disrespected in what Vegas thinks. And for a team that is returning like 10 starters on defense and 9 on offense, and a majority of them being like 4 and 5-star guys and guys that can really play, I think they have a really good shot to be very, very good.
And for the national championship odds, they're plus 2,500 on FanDuel, which that is, I mean, if you can hit on that, that's insane stuff. Now, granted,
Exactly.
that is, winners, where I think trying to find the conference odds, but I feel like that would be a little bit more favorable. But I mean,
The conference odds aren't going to be near as good as that. I think it was plus 200 or plus 300, which you still double or triple your money if they win their
right.
conference. And it's going to come down to them in Clemson, I feel like. I don't think anyone else is going to. Maybe North Carolina sneaks up in there, but
A lot of people seem to like Drake May a lot. Wouldn't be surprised to see them make some noise and some pulls.
the problem with them is their defense is not very good, and his offensive coordinator left for Wisconsin. He's still a very talented player, and I feel like they'll put up points, but there's a lot of changes going on around him. So will he be as good as last year? Remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think you're right. Lots of optimism there. Also surprisingly high national championship odds, Colorado, with they have higher odds than like Iowa State and Nebraska. I just think that's a way for Vegas to print money. Like everyone who
It's
puts a bet on that is
it's
just donating their money to Las Vegas.
it's a sucker bet. It's people are like you just said it, like it jumped out at you, and people are probably think, oh, what does Vegas know? It's a sucker bet. Their their win total is set at what, 3.5. There's no
Yeah,
shot in hell that they are going to win the Natty. So they just want to take people's money.
yeah, it's very funny to me to think that, and I think I saw somewhere that they have most money on them at a certain point to win the national championship, which is very funny to me. So yeah, Florida State plus 50, plus 150, just behind Clemson at plus 145, the ACC championship, and then it drops off pretty heavily to North Carolina and Louisville at plus 1,000.
Yeah, it's going to be those two teams.
Yeah, and the tricky thing about that is that Florida State's schedule is so front heavy at first, where I feel like that number is not going to get much better as far as value goes, especially if they beat Clemson, because that's the big hurdle. Once they get past them, they're going to be favored in
So
every one of their games. So if you're going to do
yeah,
that, it's got to be now.
that's the big thing with me. They get LSU at home this year. Do they have Clemson at home too? Or are
I
they on the
believe
road
so.
for that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they win one of those two games, if they win both, they could, in my eyes, lose the conference championship and still be in. But if they win one and win the conference championship, I think they're in the CFP. So they're in a
Yeah.
really good spot.
So they do go to Clemson, but then they go to Gainesville. If you think that they're going to be worth anything,
No, I think they're
probably.
going to be dog water. Real quick, if Sprinkle and Brandon, if you guys had to place a wager on one person to win the Heisman and one team to win it all this year, who you guys going?
Heisman for me is Marvin Harrison Jr. I think if there's going to be a non-quarterback to win it, I think he's from what NFL folks are saying about him. I think he might be the best college football player there is, and if there is, voter fatigue for quarterbacks, and it's not like the NFL MVP where there's a lot more opportunity for non-quarterbacks to win it. I think it's like plus 2,300. Um, what I saw today, so I think that's good value. It pays off great. Yeah, that would be my Heisman for national championship. It's so tough because I can really just only picture a few games or a few teams winning the national championship. So I'm not very inclined to go on much of a limb here. I think maybe Ohio State. I think, like I said, I think Alabama's toast. I think Georgia, just the likelihood of three-peating feels so insane to me that I don't think they are. And then, yeah, I think they're next up at plus 650. So Ohio State and Marvin Harrison, especially because those do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
If Ohio State goes off, it's probably because he's doing crazy stuff. So that would be my go-to.
Sprinkle, who you got?
So, who are the the top like front runners for Heisman? Because I have no idea.
So front runners, Caleb Williams, the big favorite.
Okay.
Shoot, that's the individual. Oh no, I got it right here. Jaden Daniels from Kansas. This is number.
Ooh.
No. Jaden Daniels from
Ooh.
LSU.
Oh,
Oh.
that's Sprinkle. I did figure out it's Jalen Daniels.
Yeah.
Jalen Daniels.
It just threw me off because I'm like, I don't think he's that high. But yeah, Jaden Daniels from LSU's number 2, Quinn Ewers, Cade Klubnik, Jordan Travis, Michael Penix Jr., Drake May, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, which feels silly. And then
Dude,
it
I
goes on
think
from there. You guys, Spencer Rattler's
I-
at plus 4,000.
Well, fuck that fucking rat. I don't care about him. So I like Drake May, but if the team doesn't do well, then he's not going to win it. So that's the only issue.
Margin for error is
Alright.
so thin with him and North Carolina as a whole.
What team do you
I
like
just
to win
don't-
it all?
Oh, to win it all, I kind of like USC. I'm not gonna lie. Like
Good bet.
I mean, Caleb Williams is incredible. You're gonna have a lot of great players on USC. You always will. I like USC as like a sneaky. Oh shit, they're doing something kind of team. So I'll take them. And yeah, I might as well take Caleb Williams to repeat as Heisman.
That'd be crazy.
Jordan Travis, FSU, double dip there.
Yeah, that's a good move. I can see him going off. Just a quick little side note: Jalen Daniels from Kansas plus 10,000 to win the Heisman. So real good value there.
Dude.
Also, fun fact: Arch Manning is plus 8,000. So you get
He's not even gonna
That's
play.
crazy.
How would he?
Well,
play. Well, I mean, FanDuel thinks that there might be some juice there.
Jalen Daniels from Kansas, if you have $1 available to you, at those odds, I would put $1 on that man to win. What is
I might have to
100?
take a trip to Iowa.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see Hunter Decker there.
Yeah,
Hunter Decker's there.
Yeah. Well, perfect. That's all I had. Plenty of stuff to go over. By the time that we talk next, I mean, college football could still look very different than it does today, which is crazy to think about. Anything else you guys would like to add?
I think we hit it all tonight, fellas.